I've randomly decided to make a video about my Vanny mask. I've already finished it a while ago actually, but I really wanted to make a video about it, at least just show what I did on the mask. So just a little summary of what I actually did. It's not a full-on tutorial. It's just basically to show what I myself did, so that people who are currently working on cosplays, want to do cosplays, or even want to do the exact Vanny mask, that they have a little insight of what I did, and maybe some people have any interest in this. So I really like the Help Wanted mask, and I've just decided, hey, this character seems to be really interesting, and the emails we have of Ness in special delivery seem to also give a little insight in her character. It interested me, and I just thought, okay, I need to make this mask right now. Kinda sad that it probably won't be like Vanny just having a casual mask and just walking around with it. But okay, a little explanation at the beginning. I'm from Germany, to the ones who don't know. Just to be aware that my English isn't the best, and I'm going to try my best not to make too many grammar mistakes, but please excuse me if I do. This video will probably also mostly consist of pictures instead of videos. Maybe a few little small videos of my old Instagram story, because while I was making the mask, I was recording my current progress on the mask and just uploaded it. I don't want to promote that right now, but just if anyone is interested in looking a bit more into these, I have a little bit of that, so yeah. Yay! Let's go! So the first thing you need to do is, of course, get the material you're supposed to use for the base. And what I always at least used is foam. You can probably also make the mask out of plastic, but I have no experience in that at all. And it seems to be always easier for me to just use foam instead. It depends on the person. I personally used foam because it's really soft, and the thing is, when you use harder material, there could be the possibility of it ironically breaking, and when you have foam, it's not really a risk when your mask falls down. I know it might get dirty, but the thing is, at least it won't break, so I can like do anything with it, and it's kind of flexible, as you might have seen already by the little videos there that I made. They're pretty cursed. Also, make sure you get the right kind of foam. The thing is that there are foam pieces that are a bit harder, in my opinion, and then some that are extremely soft, and so that means they are lighter. So I still had old foam left that was pretty light, and that was the foam that I used for the ears at the end, at least mostly, and that will also give you an advantage when you later on use wires, because the lighter the foam is, the easier it is, of course, for it to stay in the same place. Of course, it's still wobbly, but it's not as wobbly as if you would have like really heavy material, in my opinion. After that, I've decided to make a paper base. I think I already made one in beforehand. So the thing is, since I didn't have the game, since I don't have a VR headset, I just got gameplay footage in order to make a reference sheet. So it was difficult because I first didn't know that there was a front view of the mask as a picture, which I later found on Google, like of the actual mask. Then somebody actually ported the mask to SFM, so it was easier for me to download it off the workshop on Steam, and I could just make posters. So I'll probably show the posters that I made there. They were just only for reference, so I didn't really care about the lighting. What I then did, which I've shown in this small video, but it's not everything, it's just at least the small beginning that I made. I copied every base that I had drawn on a piece of paper, and I cut these out, and then I had used them for the foam base. So I just drew the lines on my foam base. I also divided the snout and like the eyes. I cut them off for later, because when you cut into the foam and like shape it, you of course need to redraw all the lines all over again, and sometimes it's not even possible anymore when it's like sort of 3D-ish, so it's not really easy to just draw the lines on again when you have a flat piece of paper and an already like quote-unquote sculpted foam. Basically, I made a base, and then I remade the base. So we have the front, left, right, bottom and top. So these were pretty helpful, and when it comes to shaping, it really takes a lot of time, at least for me. I think I spent like more than 5 hours after I had already made the square knee, like little square Vanny shape foam base thing, and then I shaped it, and it took me 5 hours to make like the general look of the mask. So here you can also see me shaping the foam, and just a little time lapse of some of these parts. I personally just used a scissor and a cutter knife. If you use a cutter knife, please be careful with that. It's pretty sharp and you don't want to hurt yourself, so please get something to protect your hands or be really careful with that. I was stupid. Maybe I shouldn't have been so reckless with that, but it worked out. So the cutter knife is pretty helpful to make the hair part of Vanny. I'm sure that there are pretty good other scissors or other things that you can use in order to cut the foam. I just used the material mostly that I have at home. Just after I shaped it, I made that little base. As you can see, the shape of this is already like for the mask. And I made 2 of those and put them on top of each other and then glued them on. What I used as a glue is, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but I used adhesive spray in order to just get this on. Don't try to breathe it in, it's not really healthy for you to breathe it in. It also has a few warnings. It might not be the exact adhesive spray that you're going to use, since personally I'm from Germany, so I'm not even sure if this kind of spray exists in other countries, but instead they have different ones that are maybe better even. So either you could use a mask in order to like not breathe in as much, open the windows or balconies if you don't want to do it outdoors. It is the most recommendable to actually do it outdoors from what I remember. It looks pretty cursed. Vanny actually looks pretty darn cursed from the bottom. Woo! Yay, we have a cursed squareny, and what you do then is you just cut. First of all, you need to get the most like obvious parts of the foam out that won't be needed. Just cut rough edges of the foam. The cheeks, for example, they aren't supposed to be this big, so definitely the snout is like the highest part of the mask. From the back I didn't really work as much, because if you instantly try to shape the inside of the mask, you also need to try and get the shape right if you want to really wear it. Because of your nose will be a bit more to the front. So it took a lot of time to shape. I did it all in one day, so in one sitting. I did the teeth, tongue and nose separately, so that I can put them on later. Next up were the ears, and oh my gosh, the ears was so frustrating. So I had tried a few methods before I actually got wires. I actually wanted to make them entirely out of foam, but then I was like, how am I supposed to attach that foam? Even if I were to like perfectly shape the ears, I'd still need to find a way to glue them all on, and stabilizing is pretty hard with foam when it's like heavy. For example, I have made a spring bunny mask, and I was like, oh, I can wear it in future, and then I realized the ears are way too heavy and I didn't have a way to stabilize them, and they kept on falling off. So now I have a weird spring bunny head in my room with detached ears. So first of all, I tried to again make a paper base, but this time more like a bit 3D-ish, but that didn't work out. So I also tried asking a bit around, especially some people who already made a Vanny mask, and a lot of people used wires. Then I was like, hey, that's a pretty good idea, so I got wires. You should get pretty strong ones, but at the same time you need to be able to easily bend them, because I just bent them with my hands. And what I did is I had rather thin wires that I had bought. I just twisted them around. I got 2 to 3 wires and just twisted them together. Now, when it comes to also attaching the foam onto the wires, there are also a few issues, because you can't just pop them on the top or on the bottom. You need to be able to put the foam all around the wires. So here again I used a cutter knife. As you can see, I had like 2 little lines that I cut into the foam. I cut halfway in, and again 2 lines because of the 2 pieces of the wire that you're supposed to go around of, and used a lot of glue to just put it together, and I did this over and over again. You should make a big enough piece so that you only need to shape it, and just do this all over and over again. So you basically prepare yourself before shaping to make the base. Just pretend as if the wires were the endoskeleton part of the mask, because it's supposed to be on the inside, not visible, but it helps you to let the foam stay in place. Once you've completely covered the wires into the foam, you are just going to shape it. I later on smoothed it a bit more. It's always best to make the outside as smooth as you possibly can, so that it won't be as visible once you cover it with the fabric. So here's also what I realized, maybe what I shouldn't have done. Again, now here we come again to making the back of the head, or just trying to cut the inside of the head out. I should have not cut it out yet, or at least I should have put a bit more space onto the top, or just give the top a bit more foam, because what I did is I stick the wires inside of the foam on the back with a lot of pressure, and then I also put a lot of glue into the hole that I made, that I poked with the wires. One finger is about the length I put the wires inside of the foam on the back. It was again pretty frustrating. It took a lot of tries for me to shape this, but once you have it, it's fairly easy to continue, in my opinion. I also then decided to remake the nose as well as the tongue, so the color really doesn't matter at that beginning. But again, a lighter foam would always be better, just a really bright kind of foam, because you still need to cover it with, for example, white fabric. But I still had some leftover black foam, and it was just the nose, and the nose would have been like brownish black anyways. Then finally the time came for me to get the fabric, and it was rather expensive, but that's also because of the material. If you use different colored fabrics, make sure you get the same material, because if you get something with a bumpy texture or something, or like a stripy texture, and then you have something like really smooth, they wouldn't blend in together, or it would just look kind of wrong. It depends on, of course, what character you'd be having, but Vanny has like definitely the same material because it's just technically painted on, but I wanted to make something soft. And then also, when it comes to buying the colored fabric, try and get a rather flexible one, because that really helps you when you just glue everything onto the foam. There are people who are able to stitch, then there are a bit of other methods, but I myself am too stupid to stitch, so I had to glue them on, and I always did glue things on, and it always worked out for me, but just of course it won't be as good as stitching. You will have a lot of like cut-in lines that will be noticeable at the end, but there are also some tricks to try and make these as less visible as possible. So yeah, I paid 40 euros for my entire fabric. Something to make awareness of. 2 of those entire fabric sheets that I had bought, I didn't use those at all. Like this really strong pink, I didn't need that. Well, technically I used that pink, but I painted red all over it. I covered it with red entirely, and that brown there was way too bright for me. It was like an orange brown. Technically you could just get an entire white fabric sheet and then just paint everything on. I'm not sure how good this would work out, but it would definitely be a bit more accurate to the mask, because the Vanny mask itself has just a base with paint all over it. Then I decided to start off with the easier ones. So I started with the tongue. I think I also did the teeth and the nose. So like just these basic little things. Here's a small thing that I did that people rather use for stitching, but I also used it in order to get the right amount of fabric cut out. This was hard. I used like a plastic foil. I'm really stupid right now, so I'm just going to search up, and there, that thing. Once you wrap the mask around with this material, you can just use, I think it's like paper, duct tape, or how's it called? So here you can just, do this. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear what this is, but you can just do this. There you go. And afterwards I just cut it out, and then you have this cursed creature, and you don't want to see this at night looking at you. But this is important. At least for me, it was important for me. Also, when it comes to like how much fabric you're getting, I definitely got too much, but it's always better to get too much. So I cut a few pieces that I thought were important to like divide. Here definitely the big brown part and spot of Vanny was important for me to just separate. And here I had this piece. So that makes it a bit easier to explain. Cut it a bit more open because I wanted to spread it around so that it's flat. So cut it until it's flat, but at the same time make some patterns. This is usually something that people use for stitching, but I myself used it because I wanted to make sure I used the exact correct amount of fabric. Although it wasn't like 100% correct, but it did help me to get like almost as much fabric as I needed for only that part, so I wouldn't waste too much. But always be careful to rather cut out more fabric than it is on here or seen on here, because if you don't have enough fabric, you'd need to cut it out all over again, and that would have been useless. So rather get a bit more fabric than you think it would be based on here. Now the important thing is when you want to, let's say, get a white piece, and you want to get the shape right, don't use the front side. Always turn it around and then, only then, redraw the lines once it's basically mirrored. Because here's the important part. This right here was the white ear of Vanny. I cut it out like this. So I had a flat point. In here you can now see how different the shape would actually look. And that would make it again easier for you if you were to stitch. But again, I used this to get the correct amount of fabric out, and it was easier for me to glue on specific spots because I was aware of where I needed to glue them on. So you still have those black spots on here, and you don't want these on the front part. That's why you use the back side, since now you can just turn it around. And okay, usually it's not visible anymore, but maybe black wouldn't be the best choice. It's just what I use, especially because I used it later on the finished mask. But here you can see it's better to draw it on this side, because now when you turn it around again, you have the correct side that you wanted, and you don't have those annoying black markings. So that's why you turn it around, and then you have the base part that you can put onto the mask and glue it on. So now it comes to like gluing the fabric onto the foam. Again, the ears are a hard part when it comes to trying to glue the colored fabric onto the ears. So I first of all already painted and shaded the inside of the pink ear. And I also already painted the teeth and the nose. These are the parts that I wanted to glue on at the end. The first thing that I think I glued on is the inside of the mouth, so like this blackish part. You technically could just make a clean Vanny mask, but I wanted to make the help wanted one as much as possible. When it comes to using paint, try and use textile paint. So at the same time also be careful with that, because you might ruin your clothing and you don't want it. Please don't do it. Protect your clothes. Before I glued on the red eyes that I already painted, I actually cut out the pupils and made little eye holes. And also once you had those eye holes that you cut out, you can breathe a bit more. It depends on where your nose is, of course, and how you cut the inside. I didn't cut the inside out enough, and so it's pretty hard for me to breathe. And then I glued the eyes on, and as carefully as possible, because I still wanted to leave the part out where the eyelashes are. So just the red inside of the eyes are what I had glued on. So now then I realized when I wanted to glue on the brown fabric that it was way too light of a color, so I looked around at my old cosplay stuff and I found the brown that I used for the spring bunny nose, and that was rather more accurate to the game. I should have painted over it, but I didn't. So then I made the white fabric part of the inside of the ears that are actually rather brown because of the quote-unquote dirt on the mask. I hadn't glued on the pink part yet, of course. The pink isn't actually pink, it should have the same brown as the other part of the white ear with the dirt. So then I finished gluing on the pink, and since I had these little sticky tape bases, it was rather easy now for me to glue them instantly onto the ear because I already had the perfect shape for them. So there was an advantage afterwards, although it was a frustrating progress. So you can see them glued on to the mask, so just the inside, not the outside yet. The outside is what I put on afterwards, and then I later on painted on these after I actually glued on everything else. So here you can see the weird shape. So I finished gluing on the ears, and then came the rather big brown spot on Vanny's face. Again, looks pretty weird, but it helps to glue it on like this. It was a bit complicated what I did here, because you can see those little lines that I had made. And also, as you can see here, I didn't completely already glue it on because you still need that big white part, so I left the edges a bit out, so you can put the white fabric below the brown fabric. And putting the white fabric on was a bit difficult because it's such a big piece. I'm not sure, I think I did it in one piece, but it was annoying because I had to cut in a lot of holes. You can see those little bumps, so these could be avoided if you would like perfectly shape the mask really smooth, but I wasn't motivated to do that. And yeah, I almost ran out of glue, but I still managed to get that as well as the backside. But the backside is something I did way later. The mask looks a little bit weird, extremely cursed. You can make memes out of those, like this toy bunny thing with no makeup. What I used is a black textile pen, again textile related. The actual 3D mask also has a lot of like black outlines on some spots, especially on the ear, and of course the eyelashes. I didn't use a brush, maybe for the bigger areas, but the general shape was done with a pen. Didn't put the eyebrows at the right position though. I know one eyebrow is a bit more one eyebrow is a bit more up than the other, but I did the opposite thing. I put the left one a bit too far up, I think. So here's also a little time lapse of how I actually painted the mask. Not sure how much I'm going to show because I'm not even sure if I can talk as long as this video is. So I basically live streamed me painting some parts on Instagram. Some parts might look a bit too dirty, but that's basically what it's supposed to be. It should look dirty and old, and used white. I think I just mixed the white with the brown, and definitely a lot of white because it's supposed to be rather bright, especially when you want to transition that dirty texture onto the mask. So then of course it came to making the dirty parts, like these little smudges on the mask. The good thing is even textile paint can be mixed together, so that was nice. When it comes to the headband, I'm not even sure if it's a headband, but I should have glued it on at the end and not at the beginning. I pointed at these black whiskers, and as you can see while I'm painting, you can see these cut-in edges where I glued the fabric together. And there you can see that I tried to put the black markings of her whiskers exactly at that point where I was cutting. The thing is, I made all those smudges on the white part of the mask, but I didn't shade the brown part of the mask, which is what I should have done, but I could still technically do that, so sadly it looks a bit off because then you can see the smudges on that part but not on the brown spots of Vanny. I didn't really put that much detail into the inside of the mouth because you rarely see it. I only used that water bottle for paint, don't worry, it's cursed. And then I also glued the rest on. So here's me dying because I accidentally forgot to close the lid while I was talking to people on the stream. Okay, if this was... Oh my gosh, I'm so bad. No! No! Oh my gosh! So then I just cleaned it up real quick. See me doing this. I wish I was as fast as the video was showing. And then you have your finished Vanny mask, except of course there's the back side of the head that still needed fabric. Here you can see I cut 2 weird lines. That's only because I had that headband. I already glued that on, and this is what I shouldn't have done because as you can see I made 2 unnecessary cuts that could have been avoided if I had just not already glued it on. What I should have done is I should have waited, first of all get the brown fabric over the mask, and then afterwards you make 2 little cuts with your cutter knife. Always be careful. Make these lines as long as your little headband at the end is, and try to stick it a bit inside of the foam. So try to cut a bit deeper, because the deeper you put the headband into the foam, the more stable it will get. Just one thing that I still wanted to mention, the pupils inside that area. I needed to put black fabric into that little circle, and it was so difficult because it's pretty difficult to get it all around, and maybe just paint that area black if it doesn't work. So, and there's the finished result. I painted the edges of the brown parts of the fabric a bit white, and I tried to make a little transition to the brown so that you don't really see the end of the brown fabric lines. In the meantime, and maybe a little bit right after I finished the mask, I also did a few other things. So for example, I made this little endoskeleton head from Fnaf World, the one from Mango, because I still had some leftover trash, like I said on that video. So I used a bit of different foam. So there's also the black foam again. Cardboard doesn't really work well with water, so basically not good when you're in the rain. I basically used acrylics to paint the entire endoskeleton head. I didn't use a textile paint here. So here I actually used a hook and loop tape thing. So now I was able to just turn the little ball around so that he looked happy, although the problem is the pupil would stay there at the same place. That doesn't really serve any purpose, but the only purpose it has was basically this thing. So I also did a paper plate bunny from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So the ones you see in a room of the restaurant. I just used 2 paper plates, pretty cheap ones. The sad thing is they don't really look like the ones in the game, but I didn't care. I just had these at home and I was like, hey, why not do that? So now it's just sitting there in my room. I changed my room a bit. It looks really messy in this one, although it's just a little part of my room. But I cleaned it a bit more up so that it doesn't look crowded anymore. Like all these other plushies are dead. They're in... Where are they? How's it called? Ah yeah, they're in the attic. In the attic. Attic? Attic? They're dying there now, so that's nice. Of course, initially my first thought is when I have a paper plate bunny and I have a Vanny mask, I just put the Vanny mask on top of the head. This is so cursed, and I wish I wouldn't have created this creature. It just came to existence by itself. people should make a horror game out of this alone. It's just something you wouldn't want to witness, so yeah. I think that just basically sums it all up now. I hope I could try and explain a little bit what I actually try to do. So this is just a little small video how I actually created the mask and how I myself try to solve the problems that I had while making this mask. I usually make animations, but I thought I'd just add some more different content to the stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm really awkward right now. I think I should stop talking because the more I talk, the more I will have to edit out. And I think I'm just backstabbing my future self. But alright, I think yeah, that's it. Cool. Okay, I'll just head out. Bye.